Hi there, welcome to this RAW News special hustings for the candidates to be president of the Warwick University Students' Union. It's election week next week with voting opening on Monday. That's Monday the 22nd of February. It opens at 12 noon and will be open until Friday at 7 p.m. We encourage you all to vote and to, of course, speak to the candidates, hear from them today, and then you can have your say from Monday. We are live across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, so hello to everyone joining us live, and if you're watching later on, well, hello to you as well. Over the next half an hour, we're going to meet most of the candidates to be the next president of Warwick Students' Union, asking your questions, going over some key policy topics and making sure that we all know where the candidates stand. And if you'd like to have your say at any point today, then you can comment below on Facebook and on YouTube, or you can reply to the stream on Twitter, and we will pose those questions to the candidates. Just make sure you're not asking a question of one particular candidate, but you're asking of all the candidates. So that's the plan. Let's meet the candidates to be the next president of Warwick Students' Union. One by one, we'll bring them in. They can introduce themselves, and I'm going to go by the order. They're on my screen. So we start with Leonardo Palmer. Hi, Leo.
Hi there. Pleasure to be here.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what year you're in, and what you study, etc.
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Leo. I'm a current finalist and politics international student, and I'm running because I'm disappointed about the direction of the Students' Union. I wasn't considering running in my final year, but I thought that the current direction of the Students' Union and the university needs to be addressed and needs to be a strong person to change this direction. The SU has failed in supporting students who have been discriminated against and suffer sexual assault. The SU has let us down in defending our educational rights, in securing a safety net, and ensuring that students feel safe on campus. I'm running to ensure that Student Union represents everyone, and I'm hoping to be a president that speaks to all liberation, ethnic minority peoples, and actually to listen to their concerns and actually bring their concerns to the university and ensure that it's a Students' Union fighting for their beliefs and their rights.
Okay, very good to see you today, Leonardo. And we bring in next Megan Clark. Hi, Megan. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Megan. I'm your current Education Officer and Deputy President. I graduated last year from a history degree. Over my last 7 months as Education Officer, I have seen firsthand how students have been left behind by both national government and our university at Warwick. I have been fighting for a comprehensive safety net. I've won more self-certifications for students. As your SU President, I want to lobby the university and national government for tuition fee refunds and rent refunds. This year we've been exploited by both institutions. We have been brought back we have been brought back with lies about in-person teaching and online learning and blended learning, and we should not be paying those fees. I will continue to lobby for a comprehensive safety net, and I will continue to lobby for more preventative measures against sexual assault on campus.
Okay, Megan, very good to see you today. We'll talk to you more in a moment. Our next candidate is Shingai. Hi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello there. My name is Shingai Zumbira. I am a Warwick Law School graduate and a Warwick Manufacturing Group graduate. So I studied my master's at WMG. I'm the current postgraduate officer in the Students' Union, and that means that I've been key to a lot of educational policy wins that we've had. But I've also seen firsthand the issues that students are having in terms of finding adequate support, in terms of their voices being accurately portrayed and acknowledged both within the Students' Union and before the university. So I want to ensure that student consultation is at the center of everything that we're doing at the Students' Union, making sure that the support services that students want and expect are made available, whether well-being services, whether financial support services. I believe that the university hasn't done enough to help students through this tough time, and I'm wanting to ensure that that happens. And one thing that I really want is a student-focused SU, one that has no gimmicks, no publicity diversity stance, because I think we've seen a lot of those things where students' desires are overtaken by desires of small groups of people who are pushing their own selfish agendas. And I want to ensure that the student union is more focused than ever. And I know that this remit that I will be given as president over that which I have as postgraduate will give me wider scope to address some of the issues that I've seen in the past 5 months that I have been in office. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us today, Shingai. We'll talk to you more in a moment. And the final candidate joining us, and now are some other candidates standing who weren't available today. Our final candidate joining us is Luke Shortland. Hi, Luke. Do you want to do the same and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. My name's Luke, and I want to be the next president of Warwick Students' Union. I'm a philosophy finalist, and I also currently sit on the Students' Union Democracy Committee. I'm also chair of my department's Student Staff Committee. So I've been lobbying for change in the SU for, 4 years now, including all the way from Australia, which was an interesting experience. And I've also been speaking to the staff at Warwick and making change happen there. So I have experience with making change happen. I believe the Students' Union priorities this year have been all wrong. We've seen that in the lack of social events that have been held in contrast to other universities, such as the University of Birmingham. We've seen that with the SU fighting for entirely online teaching when it was clear that people didn't want that. And, I think it's really important that the SU focuses on the things that matter most to students. My top 5 priorities are holding big social events as soon as possible, no detriment policy, putting money in students' pockets, reopening learning facilities like the library, and in-person teaching as soon as it's allowed. So if you want to live better, laugh more, learn more, then you have to vote for Luke for president.
Okay, Luke, very good to see you today. And a reminder, the voting opens Monday, 12 noon, and you can vote at warwicksu.com/vote, and voting closes on Friday next week at 7 p.m. Let's bring all the candidates on screen now. So, of course, we've got Leonardo, Megan, Shingai, and Luke. And here we all are. The way we're going to do this is we're going to work through some different policy areas. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. If you can keep your answers brief where possible so we can get through as many issues. And then we'll go to an open debate. And any viewers who'd like to submit questions, do that in the comments below. Let's start by talking about in-person teaching. Of course, operating online learning at the moment, but many students will be hoping to return to in-person teaching either this academic year or next. Let's go first to Luke Shortland. Luke, when should we return to in-person teaching?
Simple answer, we should return to in-person teaching as soon as it's allowed. We saw in the autumn students' vote, the SU tried to push this idea that we wanted online teaching, but actually students turned up in record numbers, and 4,000 students, which was about 75% of them, voted against holding entirely online teaching. We find in-person teaching so valuable, and I personally do a German module. So an online German module is no more than Duolingo. I think it's ridiculous that I should be paying £9,250 for that. And I think it's awful that the SU was pushing for that to happen. So simple answer, we should return to in-person teaching as soon as it's allowed by the government.
Okay, Megan Clark, your thoughts?
Yeah, as your SU president, I will fight for us to return to face-to-face teaching as soon as it's safely possible and ensure that that is effectively communicated to students. We don't want to be in a situation where the university says one day, I'll come back to campus, and suddenly everyone has to rush back from across the country or even more across the world. Face-to-face teaching should always take place in line with the best scientific advice. None of us wanted to be in this situation with online learning, especially in lockdown this term. The national government has addressed this pandemic appallingly, and we're just trying to deal with the consequences of that. And I want students to know the consequences of that, have effective communication as to what is happening, and return to face-to-face teaching, which is the best form of teaching, as soon as possible.
Shingai, your thoughts?
As an international student, something that I've started to value more than ever and have always valued, and that is the ability to control key decisions to do with my education. And I think such a decision such as has to be consulted. I've always been a advocate for in-person learning where it is possible to do so, and the regulations are allow for it. And I believe that's because of the benefits that it avails. Over the past few months, we've heard from students the impact it has had switching from online to from in-person learning to online. And you can tell that the ability to grasp information is so different. The way to maneuver around online learning system is so different to what it would be in person, and it's far from ideal. So as soon as we're able to get back to that, I think it's important to put that, but to also make sure that students are consulted about it. And if there are any students with any concerns about coming back on campus, they should be given an option, I believe, but it shouldn't be a mandated thing for the rest of the students to be in person. So those are just my thoughts around that area.
Okay, and Leonardo, to you before we move to open discussion.
Thank you. And I think it's very important that students come back to campus as soon as possible, as safely as possible. And that means ensuring that online learning has a smooth transition to in-person teaching. We know the benefits that students have when they're in lectures, when they're in seminars. We know that students don't want to pay £9,000 to be just taught purely online. But that needs to be with a big consultation of students. If this is something they want, we will push for it. We also need to hold our officers accountable for what they did in August, pushing for online learning when a whole consensus of students didn't want that. We need to be able, as a students' union, ensure that we are providing for what the students want. We're a students' union. It's in the name. We will push the students' perspective to the university, to the local community, and lobby the government as well. So I'll ensure, as president, there is a swift return to campus, a swift return to online teaching, ensuring that this is what the students want and need.
Okay, so the consensus among the panel is at some point a return to in-person teaching, and the message seems to be when it's safe. And now as we move to open debate, if any of the panellists would like to indicate to me they'd like to come back on this, we can perhaps pose a question to another candidate or offer any other thoughts. If not, we'll move to our... Yeah, Megan, let's go to you, Megan Clark.
Yeah, I was just going to add, a lot of the candidates said we should not be paying £9,000 for online learning, and I totally agree. And that's why one of my key manifesto policy is to be lobbying with NUS and other students' union officers, lobbying national government for tuition fee refunds that leaves no student behind, whether they're an international student or not, because this year we have been lied to about what blended learning would be. We have received online learning when in-person teaching is the best, and we should not have paid £9,000 for that. So that's why that's one of my key policies, and that's one of my priorities as your SU president.
Luke Shortland.
Thanks, and I agree that tuition fee refunds are a good idea. There's no reason why we should have paid £9,000 for online lectures. But actually, what I think would be more helpful is putting money into students' pockets, because I'm struggling to afford my rent now. I can't replace my broken laptop to do my exams now. I'm struggling to put food on the table now. So whilst refunding my tuition fees is right, and it's a good idea, it will benefit me probably 20, 30 years down the line, if at all. I'd prefer money put into my pocket now instead. And I want to look at ways that we can do that. For example, with the IT support fund, reopening that, and rent refunds to help students who didn't come back to campus. I think that would be a better and more immediate concern that would help students benefit from more money now.
Okay, we move to the other two panellists now then. Let's go to Leonardo, and I can see you've both got your hands up, so I'll remember who had their hands up. Leonardo, for you.
I think I totally agree that students shouldn't be paying £9,000 for basically online learning. However, in the short term, like Luke said, this isn't a realistic or achievable policy. Yes, as president, I will fight for tuition fee refunds. However, it's important that we act now as swiftly as possible to help the students desperately in need. And that's what one of my policies is, ensuring that the university is proactively ensuring that students have access to the hardship fund. That's a fund that rolls over every year. There's £60,000 in the bucket for students to actually access if they're in financial difficulties. As a president, I will ensure that that hardship fund, the criteria to apply for it is reduced. The students can actually apply if they're struggling to pay their rent, if they're struggling to put food on the table, if they're struggling to replace anything that they need in order to achieve academically, if they need support in terms of accessing transport or well-being. And that's why I'm pushing for short-term solutions that are going to improve the lives of students right here, right now, because we're only in office for 1 year. And that's why we need achievable and realistic policies that are going to work for students now.
Okay, let's get one final thought on the return to in-person teaching from Xinghai, and then we'll move to our next policy topic.
Right. I think I'm well in agreement that the idea and the concept of tuition refunds is great. And it's nice to say that one would lobby for those things. But if we're realistic in the time frame that we have and the scope that we have as officers, it is unlikely that will be done in the time frame that students needed to. That's why in my manifesto, I address some issues and concerns. First of all, a lot of times international students are forgotten and they don't pay sometimes they pay from 18 to 25 to 30K. So one of the things that I've put in my manifesto and will do is push for increase and leniency and support for international students who aren't able to pay tuition fees, which hasn't been there in Warwick as of past, but then I've been pushing for it and we're seeing a lot of changes in that area. The next thing, definitely, I agree with Luke that we should have the reintroduction of IT support bursaries and there are ways that can be done. I've understood the concerns that the university has put forward, and I have a general idea of how we can get that done while addressing the concerns that are functioning as barriers right now, which is unacceptable. And the last thing, I did say that I'd like to widen the scope hardship funds for both home and international students. It's one thing to say that you want hardship funds to be increased or the scope to be widened. It's another thing to talk about international students and their limited access to emergency funds as well. So I'm looking at widening the scope and then also ensuring that both home students and international students have the support that they need and deserve at this time. And looking forward to the future, because we did about the unpredictability of the government as it has been, I'm looking to have the introduction of a rent waiver clause in student accommodation contracts in the event of further restrictions. This is something that we've seen done in universities such as the University of Greenwich, where they've managed to get a rent waiver clause. That means if something like this happens again, students can say, no, you can give us back our money, and it's legally there. And we're not trying to put students in a place where they might be chased after because they've not met up to their contractual obligations. So I'm also thinking about the legal protection of students in terms of accommodation. So I think that's also important to look at.
Okay, nicely leading us on to our next topic, which is about people rent striking at the moment and paying rent on properties that many are legally not allowed to access. Let's hear first on this issue from Leonardo Palmer.
So I believe that rent strikers are doing a fantastic job. This is their right. They do not deserve to be paying rent for accommodation they're not in. And that's a very simple fact. We should be supporting these students. We should be enabling them to actually do things that they need to do. But as a students' union, the current student union has not done enough to support these people. They need to be sure that they're proactively ensuring that their student needs are met, and that includes rent strikers. As president, I will go to the university and I'll say, look, this is the students' needs. They're not paying their rent because they're not living in it. It's a just cause. The university has the tools necessary, the legal expertise, and they have the connection with private landlords. They can lobby on our behalf to ensure that student rent strikers are being refunded their rent. As a students' union, we need to make sure that these voices are heard, and ensuring that these voices are heard by the top people at the university. These private landlords need to stop charging people rent just because they're not living in it. Yes, it's a private contract, but the university need to do more to support these students in a very difficult time, like a global pandemic.
Okay, Megan, let's turn to you now then. Some will say, sure, let's refund all the students, but then we're going to leave the private landlords out of pocket. Where do you stand here?
Yes, so when it comes to the rent strike, I am supporting students in the Warwick rent strike as as we speak, I am in the organising group chats, I am in their meetings regularly, I am working closely with them now and will continue to do so for as long as I'm education officer and if I get elected as president. When it comes to off-campus accommodation, I think we need to be doing more. We need to be working with local representatives to ensure they're on side to pressure private landlords. We need to be linking students up who are under the same letting agent and seeing if they can work collectively to take on their landlords that way. We need to be partnering with tenants' rights organisations such as Acorn to make sure they can support students who are struggling when it comes to rent or just landlords not meeting their obligations to repair homes, to repair damp, to repair all the issues that students face in Leamington and in Coventry in private accommodation. So I am working with the rent strikers now. I am lobbying for rent refunds now. I am lobbying for rent cuts because the rent even before COVID was too high and too expensive and unaffordable, especially for many working class students at Warwick. And I will continue to do that as president.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Let's move now to Luke Shortland.
Yeah, thanks. And I fully support the rent strike. Again, people shouldn't be paying for accommodation they can't live in. I note the recent motion that was passed by the all-student vote actually mandates the Students' Union to support the rent strike campaign financially. I believe we should be doing that. I haven't yet seen any kind of Facebook ads or Instagram ads about the rent strike. I think that's something that we can start doing immediately. To all those who are rent striking, I know that you've had some kind of you've had some wins in the form of refunds for a month or two, but those who are rent striking should continue to rent strike because you've not had all of your demands met. I think Megan does raise a good point about the fact that landlords have been letting us down for years, even before coronavirus. I currently live in a Tara and Co property, and I don't know if you can see behind me, but there's peeling wallpaper, it's damp, it's musky in here, it smells, and I promise it's not just me. So landlords really do need to be held to account for the fact that they can keep student accommodation in such poor property. I would also want to launch some kind of campaign for the SU to help students get their deposits back and to lobby against landlords who hold deposits unfairly, because especially international students, landlords see these deposits as some big kind of cash cow that they can keep without any kind of consequence. And I think that's really wrong. So that's definitely one thing that needs to be sorted out as well.
Okay, Shingai, I know we've heard you sort of talk about this a little bit earlier on, but it's only fair to let you have your say on this as well. So tell
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I think the rent strikers and what they're going through definitely is important and needs to be focused on. And this is why it's actually a students' union policy. So as it stands, unless there is another motion that's put in place and passed, every students' union officer is mandated to ensure that this happens. And the way we function in the SU is that everyone has been a part of it. Everyone has been pushing it in every office that I have access to that can make a difference. I have been pushing it. I think another thing that needs to be looked at that seems to be over what's the word? I'm thinking in a different language. But an oversight that tends to come up is that the fact that students, the legal implications and the legal position and legal support students would require. And I think that's important to look at, ensuring that our students are legally protected. And one of the things that I've been, that I really have been pushing, and I put under services in my manifesto, is bringing back Warwick accommodation as well. Why? For the external offer, so off-campus offer. Why? Because we have landlords that the university is directly communicating with, and they're able to ensure that our students are better protected. In this case, I do believe that we should continue to ensure that students have the legal representation that they need, the legal advice that they need to make the right choices and to get the right support, and then also ensuring that at a national level this is lobbied, because this has been the greatest, I guess, feat of injustice that has taken place. And I think there is a great opportunity to support them.
Okay, before I go to open debate, I'd like to flash up a comment from a viewer which perhaps you can take into consideration with your further responses now. This comes from somebody who they've named Sherborne. What do the candidates think about Warwick accommodation no longer providing off-campus housing and the impact this has on students? So feel free in your follow-up discussions now to mention that. Let's go to you, Luke.
Well, thanks. And actually, I think this is a really important question. Warwick accommodation has been a lifesaver for students over the years. It offers them a landlord or an agent that you can trust. It allows students to split the rent. And it means that you can ensure that your property is going to be decent quality and be fixed in a decent amount of time when things go wrong. But the number of Warwick accommodation properties has been declining for years. Anybody with an interest in Warwick accommodation could have been seeing that it was going to end for years. I drew attention to this on Facebook, I believe it was more than a year ago now. So the fact that the SU has only finally come round to looking at the problem, well, I'm afraid it's too little too late. And it shows the lack of focus on issues that matter to students, like housing. In my second year, I found a property. I didn't actually have any flatmates to live with until quite late. And I was originally going to rely on the Warwick accommodation emergency housing scheme, where they sort of find you a flat with sort of random people. And I feel like this would be a massive loss for lots of people. But the fact that the SU has done nothing about it until now, when it's most likely too late to save it, is ridiculous. And it shows that, frankly, they need to get their heads in gear.
Okay, I can see the hands up. We'll turn to all three of you in a moment. And I'd just like to say that, you know, we plan to end this at past. So I hope you don't mind if we extend it for 5 minutes or so we can hopefully cover another topic after this one as well. Leo, to you, and then we go to Megan and Shingai.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the question, why is the university cutting off-campus accommodation? I think it's a ridiculous decision. The president sits on the committees that ensure Warwick accommodation. He's going on each year. That's the Estates Committee. As president, I will sit on that committee and I will bring it back. The university is treating students and is treating itself as a business. And that's not what a university should do. A university needs to treat students as students and ensure that they are doing everything in their power to provide housing and facilities so students feel safe, they feel secure, and they have proper living conditions. And I'd just like to raise another point about accountability. The SU needs to be accountable for their mistakes, and the SU needs to be sure that they are supporting the students who don't feel like they are represented, especially with everything going on, the rent strikes, people without any appropriate housing. I know a lot of students who feel that they can't trust the Students' Union, that they don't feel represented or valued by going to the Students' Union. Personally, I've never seen a non-white president of the Students' Union, and I've been here for 5 years. Hopefully, if I am president, I'll be a voice for all the liberation, ethnic minority groups who don't feel that the SU is a place for them. And hopefully, if we bring more people on board, if you get more student consultation, we can bring about a lot of change and we can bring about a lot more voices and actually let the university hear the voices of students. Okay,
Shingai, to you.
Thank you so much. I think also something that I'd like to mention that we've been working on at the university, a project that I've been leading, is finding a way also to assist students, WP students and international students with deposits, especially as Warwick accommodation has been taken away from this interim period until we bring it back. So working with organizations to be able to assist them and then coming up with a suitable framework. So those are the kind of practical structures that I'm looking at. I might add what Leo said is so important. You know, I wasn't planning to run until recently, as I realized that, you know, as a Black African woman, we don't get much representation. And I thought it would be so important for me to make and pave a way and to show that it's possible, difficult as it may have been, difficult as it is. I've been dedicated to being a voice within the postgraduate community, working to establish the network of ethnic minority postgraduates, working to bring in BAME PhD bids and working to ensure that those are tailored to the needs of the students. And so I've enjoyed making a voice for people of color, and I intend to continue to do so. I secured funding, over 2K in funding for a campaign I'm running called the Black Brains, a campaign set for BAME communities and identifying and addressing issues within these communities. And I've been at the forefront at putting BAME issues on PGT, on the new PGT strategy that's currently being made. So that's something that I am dedicated to, making sure representation is there for both international students and ethnic minorities. So I thought I'd just add that.
Okay, and a final thought on this topic before we move to another policy area from Megan Clark.
Yeah. So on Warwick accommodation, it's a scheme that's so important to so many students. And as Shingai just said, also so important to widening participation students and international students who might struggle to get deposits or struggle to get guarantors, and all the requirements that private letting agents put on you are just too high. This was a purely financial decision on the part of the university, and it's a decision that highlights the fact that the university is not putting students' needs first, not putting students' welfare first. And that is something that I want to make sure they prioritise as your next SU president. The university need to take our welfare into account, not just the money we are paying for rent, for fees. And Warwick accommodation might not have been highly profitable, but it was a very necessary scheme that needs to be brought back.
Okay, Megan, let's go to our final policy topic, and as always, if you keep the answers brief here, we'll be able to cover more ground. And I'd like to talk a bit about student mental health here, because it's been a very challenging year, not just for students, but students have had a difficult time over the past 11 months or so. What are your policies around student mental health? I'd like to go first to Luke Shortland.
Oh, me first again. Fabulous. So student mental health is really important, and I feel like every year people lobby for more funding for student mental health. But the thing with Warwick University is, you know, that whenever you ask for more money, even if you get it, it's going to go to somewhere useless where nobody really, cares about it, like some kind of consultancy fee, or, it'll vanish into the ether. So whilst I would like more funding, it needs to be invested into the things students care about. So getting more frontline counselling services, so that all students can have an in-person counselling session, and reducing the waiting times for that, because students have to wait far too long for those kinds of things. Now, I also think, I can't even speak. I'm so sorry. But yeah, that's one of the most important things. I'll leave it there.
Okay, great. Let's go next to Megan Clark.
So on student mental health, this year already I've been working to effectively communicate mitigating circumstances and extend the accessibility of mitigating circumstances for students who are suffering with mental health, and therefore it's affecting their academic work. This year and next year, if I am your SU president, I've been working with the welfare officer to highlight Tiana Holgate's culturally competent care report to the university and make sure there is real change in wellbeing services and other support services, to make sure that students feel like they can go there, they will be listened to, they might even be able to talk to someone who has had the same experiences as them, and that could help. Like student mental health this year, loneliness has been a huge issue, like across society, but especially for students, especially for freshers who have moved to university in this crazy year. I also want to make sure, I think, as Luke mentioned, that wellbeing services has more on-hand talking therapies. This is one of the lesser known demands of the Warwick rent strike, actually, that there is not enough availability of counselling and the waiting time is too long. So I totally agree with Luke on that.
Okay, Shingai, to you.
Thank you so much. Similarly to Megan, I've been working a lot in highlighting and almost amplifying the work that needs to be supported by the university in terms of culturally competent care. And we've started to see the university taking that up. And I think it's so important. A lot of times we've come, I think it was in WMG where this was most highlighted to me, where you had students who are ethnic minorities unable to get the support that they needed because no one understood them, and they never got the support that they needed in the end. I've spoken to staff members who are from ethnic minority backgrounds, talking about how students come to them, but they're not qualified to help them. So I think ensuring that the project that was started on culturally competent care is accepted and started and rolled out across the university is important. Why I say across the university, I think there needs to be more embedding of mental health and well-being services at a departmental level. And the reason I say that is because students get their departments than they do with anything else. So I think it's important to have reps there. We've had academic voice reps having students approach them for mental health and well-being issues. And this means that there needs to be more equipping on that level so students have greater access to those services. And a big concern that I've really had is really students in halls. I believe they've been put in a very difficult situation, and sometimes the rules have been quite interesting about how they've been handled. For example, when they weren't allowed to mix with members in their own flats, etc. We got that changed. But I want to ensure that they're being treated fairly, they're being treated with dignity, that they're not having just fines slapped onto them. And that's something that I've been really working on to ensure that we've had students who've been in a gathering maybe of 7, or they've seen passing by someone and they're fined and they don't have food to eat. So introducing more restorative approaches to handling students, understanding that they're in a very uncomfortable situation, unpleasant situation. So ensuring that they have support, and the RLT teams are less reactive and more supportive than they have been off late. I think that's so important to look at.
Okay, and the final thought on this topic to Leonardo Palmer.
Thank you. Student mental health has always been an issue at Warwick, especially now in this global pandemic. It's affecting everyone in very different ways. Personally, it's affected me very deeply. I'm locked down in the house, and it's completely affecting my mental health. When I was CITES officer in 2018, I worked alongside Warwick Wellbeing to move their offering into Senate House, into Central Campus, securing a massive win for students. So they didn't have to travel all the way to Westwood to go to their wellbeing sessions or talking therapies, ensuring that Warwick is offering wellbeing right in Central Campus. And as president, I will do the same. I'll be securing wins for students. In my manifesto, I've clearly put out winnable policies for mental health, and that's including destigmatizing male mental health. I find it really hard to talk about my own mental health. And I know loads of people who are suffering in similar situations. I'll work proactively with societies and sports clubs to ensure that they feel able to talk about their issues and actually able to seek help that they need. I'll also introduce mental health first aid training to all academic personal tutors. Right now, they're just personal tutors assigned to roles who don't really have the training, who aren't seen competent enough, and who just treat students like something a tick box they just do. We need someone who's actually caring about the students, caring about their well-being, and ensuring that everyone has the training required to watch out for the signs and ensure that students are actually getting the care they deserve. And lastly, I also lobby for the university to provide emails to students. Right now, well-being is only offering services to those who come to them. They need to be proactively emailing students and ensuring that they're okay, ensuring that they're doing practices that will improve their mental health, especially in this global pandemic. So I will lobby for weekly emails to ensure that they feel like they're actually cared about by the university, with tips about how to cope during lockdown, how to improve mental health, things to actually do so they aren't left out and they don't feel isolated or falling through the net. Okay,
and just in this final couple of moments, I'd like to do a couple of quick fire questions on other areas, because I'm aware we're well over time. And I'm not going to tolerate much more than a yes or a no on this, and perhaps a sentence as well. Sexual violence has been a big issue over the past few years at Warwick. Has enough been done over the past 12 months? Megan, I can see you shaking your head.
I mean, like, the Warwick group chat first emerged in my first year, and not enough has been done over the past 4 years, let alone the past 12 months. That's the shortest answer I can do.
Okay, that's the length of answer we're aiming for, folks. Luke?
No, less than 50% of students know what help is available, so we need to develop more effective tools and publicise them to students with a Moodle module on everyone's dashboard.
Leonardo?
I disagree. A Moodle module is not enough. No, there's not been enough work done to support these students. And then we need an SU that actually listens and champions their views, and actually lobby the university and work with them to reduce the waiting times for disciplinaries, to get people the answer they deserve, and to get closure.
Okay, and finally on this topic, Shingai.
The support has been dismal, and I think the university needs to start adopting a proactive approach instead of being reactive. The issue is not hidden. They need to in better measures to ensure that this is addressed, but not only that, to ensure that there are preventative measures, not enough education, not enough proactive measures have been put forward, and that is disappointing.
Okay, and the final quickfire policy topic is about a carbon neutral campus. Here I want a yes or a no and then a year. So should we be carbon neutral, and if so, by what year? And we'll go by the order that's on my screen. Leonardo?
Yes, ideally 2025.
Megan?
Yes, and I'd agree with Leo, 2025.
Luke?
2468, 2050 is too late. Let's make it 2025.
Shingai.
I'm agreeing with Leo on this one.
Oh, well, we've got something that everybody on the panel agrees
I'm a trendsetter.
Great to see you all. Thanks so
I had
much
the
for
wine.
choosing to spend some time with us today. And if that hasn't been enough hustings actions, the SU is hosting hustings for multiple positions this evening between 5 and 7. And I'm sure you'll all be there. Thanks, folks. See you soon.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Johnny.
Bye-bye.
Good luck with campaigning, everyone.
So they're the candidates, some of the candidates to be the next president of Warwick University Students' Union. There are some others who we weren't able to reach today. Voting opens on Monday at 12 noon, and you can vote at warwicksu.com/vote. It's open until Friday at 7 p.m. We'll be doing an exit poll, so once you've voted, head over to our RAW socials, tell us how you've done so we can get an accurate perception of who Warwick students want to be the next president among the other positions as well. Thanks so much for watching, and keep your eyes peeled for more big decision coverage over the course of the next week.